Okay, hi everybody. Today is Tuesday, September the 12th. Welcome to the SIG Testing weekly meeting, which is being publicly recorded and will be broadcast or will be posted to YouTube later today or tomorrow, time permitting. So, two things on the agenda, unless anybody has anything more urgent. First up, we're going to talk about the repo publishing bot. We've got Daniel Smith from API Machinery here, since most of the repos affected are API Machinery facing. And then I have, never mind. And I have a laundry list of other tested things. So with that, Daniel, do you want to provide some context around?
Yeah, sure. I can give context.
Okay.
So various people in the project have this idea that in order to increase velocity and throughput and et cetera, all that good stuff that makes developers happy, we need to split our development effort into multiple repositories. Other people don't think this is a good idea. I'm not here to weigh in on that debate. It turns out that some people need to publish chunks of the repository in composable, consumable pieces. So like the Go client library, users of the Go client library need to use the Go client library, and they don't want to use the rest of the code for the system. Like, you shouldn't have to import kubelet to use the Go client library. It turns out we have multiple things like this. Just in API Machinery, we have the Go client library. We also have the library for making API servers. And it turns out some authors may want to make an API server, which is also a client. This means you need to be able to use both of those chunks of code together. And that turned up a problem with our initial approach, which is we were making a copy of all the API types and putting them in the client. Now, if we do that, you import the client, you get a copy of the API types. You import API server, you get a direction to the main repo's API types, and those API types are not the same. Goes import package technology will make your life very miserable. So the solution to this was to split out the API types themselves into yet a third repository. So that's what we did. So we have, and then we've grown, like, similar arguments caused us to make an API Machinery repo. We've got a Open API type repo. We've got a example API server repo. So we've got a number of repos. It does happen that I think most of the repos are API Machinery, but that's purely an artifact of the fact that we were blocked first. So we had to do something. We ended up making the repo publisher to well, let me give even more context. So we intended to get to a world where people actually did the development for these repos in those repos themselves. But obviously there's going to be a long time delay. Like, we can't flip a switch and get into that world. Like, there's documents to be updated, there's PRs in flight, there's all this stuff that needs to happen before that is even a theoretical possibility that we can consider. So we knew that we were going to live in this world for a while. So we made this staging directory. So everything is checked into the main repository, but some things are checked into a directory that is underneath the staging directory. So the staging directory is basically the contents of a bunch of external repositories. So that solves the transitional state problem. But we actually need those external repositories to exist in reality for a number of reasons. The most obvious is that people actually want to download these things and install them and run them. And for that to work, you need a repo out there for go get to work and all that good stuff. So that explains why do we need to copy the stuff out of the staging to client Go. Now, that also means we need to copy it out for other repos too, because the client repo depends on the other things. And if you only copy out client Go, then you have the same problem, right, for all of its dependencies. So that explains why do we have like a bunch of different random stuff in the staging directory. And that,
just real quick on the staging thing, is the state of the world still that mainline development is happening inside of the staging directory? Like it's not actually
correct.
happening?
Yeah, so development, like the staging directory is the canonical location. And to solve the problem where we need to get this content out there for other people, Chow, and it was mostly just you, right? Yeah, Chow wrote the repo publishing bot, which does some fancy Git voodoo and syncs up history and pushes over to these external repositories. So that's what the repo publishing bot does. What we're sort of asking for is we want to transition because this bot doesn't really fall under API Machinery's mandate, and there's other SIGs are going to start to take advantage of the same mechanism. So we sort of want to graduate it into a standard tool, much like the submit queue or Kubernetes or all those other fancy things are standard tools. And there's some sort of rotation, and there's people who know what to do when they break. So that's what we're hoping to get out of this, is some sort of agreed path to get to the point where this is a standard tool with support and rotation and people that will love and care for and feed it that aren't me.
Okay, so agree with that completely. And then I think I'm under the impression that the syncing of those repos currently happens on, does that happen on any regular interval or cadence?
Oh yes. So I forgot to clarify the thing that is bringing this to everybody's attention at the moment, which is that it's broken. And Chow and STTTS, Stephen from Red Hat. Chow is right here. They are working hard on fixing it, and Ryan, also on the call, is apparently working on assuming some sort of ownership of some sort. So we have transition strategies sort of in progress. And the thing is, it's broken at the moment and has been broken for a while, which is blocking people who need to vendor stuff in. So we've come up with a temporary workaround, which is I've temporarily made Chow a bot, and he can run this script manually to fix all these repos. But we don't want to stay in that state for long. Otherwise, Chow will be sweating bullets every time he runs a Git command. So that's sort of the thing that is forcing the issue at the moment.
To unpack that a little bit, my understanding is that STTS's pull request is sort of about an additional munger, I think, or changes to the publishing bot. I forget if the bot's a munger, but he's got that running. He's got his fork running in a separate cluster and pushing to his forks of those repos. And so the script that Chow runs basically is a fast forward push from those forks to the main repos.
Yes.
So we asked that Chow become a bot, meaning that he has write privileges to all of those repos to be able to do that push.
Yes. So Stefan's PR, he changed the algorithm of the publishing robot so that the robot will also pick the merge commits from the Kubernetes repo. And the purpose is that we can synchronize the Kubernetes tags to all those different repos. So for example, if we have a 1.7.0 tag on the Kubernetes, the robot is going to automatically tagging all the deriving repos with the same tag so that people can find the correct matching versions among all those repos. So I took maybe 2 passes of his PR. The algorithm is quite complicated, It involves a lot of Git knowledge. I mean, I'm not confident enough to say LGTM right now. So maybe Ryan here could also take a pass so we can have more confidence.
I mean, I was reviewing it when we were looking at short-term solutions to the current breakage. The publisher does Git rewrites. It does a Git filter branch and a bunch of rewriting to make the commits show up on the like the sub repos essentially, and it got confused by a merge commit going in the wrong direction essentially. So
I don't want to design it here.
no. So anyways, I've just been reviewing the code to help it get more fixed, and obviously the manual state is bad, but I think Chow doing it right now makes sense for the because like API machinery is the one that should own that for the current one, and then of course tester infer can keep the bot running once it exists, and I think Stefan is getting that working. But the larger scale multi-repo story has not really been solved, and this is kind of a band-aid that we've been using.
Yeah, I would say this isn't really a solution for the multi-repo work, but it seems like we will be in this transitional state for the foreseeable future. Therefore, this thing needs to be sort of production grade.
So this is basically mashing history from one repo to several other repos, right? And we're going to live with this for an interim period of time. I mean, we need to have an exit strategy, or somebody needs to have an exit strategy. Because we can't, the problem with status quo in a project of this size is that it has a tendency to be maintained for some extended period of time. So there needs to be like some window period that says thou shalt support this, otherwise at some cutoff date, you know.
In terms of exit strategy, I tried to sort of rally the troops to like finish the job, and the troops have not rallied. I would expect to live in this transitional state for perpetuity at this point. I know there are some people who would like to sort of finish the job and start developing in these other repos, but I haven't seen anyone sort of take the helm and like start pushing on that. So I don't expect it to happen. I just don't expect it to happen at this point, but I'm kind of pessimistic. I know some people like Brian Grant would like to see it happen. In fact, he would like to see it happen like January next year. I haven't seen evidence that that's actually going to be the case, but you know, Brian's pretty amazing, so maybe he's got people to do it. But basically, there is no exit strategy at this point, and I don't think the lack of an exit strategy should block making this tool production ready. Like the minimum amount of time that this tool needs to be operational is at least 6 months, say. Right.
And to be clear, what happened is the tool was working. It was a fragile series of bash scripts, and Stefan has rewritten it to be a more robust Go program, so it should not be causing continuous problems with one-off commits breaking it.
I think the route. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Let me.
So it should be a very low maintenance piece of read-only mirrors of these sub-repositories that we can maintain as long as we want until we have a way to have development in those sub-repositories for some of them. And even then, I bet there will be some where we won't have the case where every single one of them is its own working repository, just because some of them are quite minor and naturally subordinate to other ones. Like, I don't know if you'll ever want to have a types repo that's totally independent of the normal Kubernetes, because that would be kind of annoying for PRs, but that's, yeah. You can look at the list of them and see that some of them are more obviously independent than others.
Yeah, I don't really want to debate is it good to be multi-repo or not.
I agree that this isn't the place to necessarily hash out that design. From my purposes, I think that the intent of getting you and like hashing this plan out here was to make sure that we all had operational buy-in. That to me, when we say transitional state, the big transition I have in my head is that Chow is a bot. I want to know when Chow is no longer a bot. And to me,
Chow's going to no longer be a bot as soon as he pushes that. Yeah, I don't think anybody
I
wants
think
Chow
the
to be a
thing that
bot.
what I would like, the reason why I wanted you here, Daniel, is because I want to talk, like, I know that what you want to get into a world where the bot is working, and if the bot is not working, someone is fixing it who's not you. And that's not where we are right now. And, you know, I feel like we are not yet in the state where if it fixes, you know, like I think Stefan and Xiao are sort of saying like, hey, it's broken, like, hey, SIG testing, like, go push it for us manually. And I don't think we are in that state at this point. And I'm trying to figure out what I would like to talk about is what do we need to get to where, you know, this is, one, is this something that SIG testing wants to support, like we support Kubernetes and the submit queue? And two, what needs to happen before we consider it, you know, supported in the same way? And like, Ryan, do you have thoughts about that?
It's good that the people involved in, so basically right now the people that care about having go get work for these other repos are the ones that are working on it, which seems appropriate. I think
a lot of people care that go get works, and it's not just go get, it's also vendoring tools. Like I had like 3 different people yelling at me on Monday because this was broken. So
yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, and this, I'm not trying to divert the discussion to this issue, but one downstream example I've seen is that Helm couldn't say that they supported Kubernetes 1.7 because they were consumers of some of these repos, which themselves didn't actually release until a couple weeks after 1.7 went out the door.
yeah, this is a major, this really kills the ecosystem when these subordinate repos don't get updated.
I'm currently in the state of pending on the latest 1.8 client library tooling set in order for me to do my work, which is now outside the core primarily.
Yeah. So anyway, please continue, Ryan. Sorry to interject.
Yeah, so we can keep it running. I don't know about when we'll have Stefan has obviously invested a lot of time in getting this working. He has something like 40 or 50 commits in his PR. So he's been hacking with this for a long time. I don't know if we have the resources for that sort of investment. We can certainly keep the bot running and fix minor problems like that, but more major re-architectures, I don't know if we can invest in for current roadmap.
I mean, hopefully re-architecture won't be needed in the future.
Exactly.
But
so basically, I think we can make sure it runs nightly or at whatever cadence and monitor that, but not do major changes beyond that.
Yeah, I don't
But
think.
what happens, you know, I assume that if we run it nightly for a few weeks or months, something will happen and somebody will do some change or something is going to happen where it's broken. What happens when it breaks after, you know, is it just that we want, I mean, what happens when it breaks?
So for the last few breakage, so once it's because the Go language update, or we updated to a newer version of the Go language, and the robot is running Go test with an old Go language, and then it fails. And the most recent breakage is because someone checked in a merge commit, which is not clean, and the robot doesn't consider that case, and then the robot is broken. So Stefan's PR is going to fix that, but I mean, who knows what else can go wrong in the future.
I think we should plan for something. I mean, something is going to go wrong if it's important and we use it. I assume sometime during the 1.9 time frame, it is going to break and someone's going to need to fix it. And so who is going to fix it? And what happens, you know, like this last time, right? A weird merge commit caused the staging or the staging bot to be broken for like, you know, some number of days, which is now requiring or is motivating all of this desire to do some manual staging. You know, so how do we figure out that? Like, what is going to happen in 1.9 when the staging bot breaks? Is that going to be, you know, Stefan from API Machinery fixing it again, or is it going to be, you know, us, or what? That's what I want to talk about.
I mean, just to help me understand timeline, are we talking about turning this bot on prior to cutting V1.8?
The bot should be turned on whenever this PR is in and we're confident.
Yeah, and I felt like what motivated turning Chow into a bot was it might have some weeks of review time.
Regardless of if it's going to take more than a few days, then many significant changes went to the repository recently, and people are blocked and can't do their jobs because they can't update their vendoring for repos that depend on these things that we should be but aren't publishing.
I guess what I'm trying to drive to is it seems like the urgency to make sure we get this done with a workaround now is 1/8, and we might have some time to plan this.
So I think this is completely disconnected from Kubernetes release cycles, and that's really got nothing to do with it.
Okay.
But so after this PR emerges, what else does SIG testing and or Ryan want before this is something that test in for on-call supports? Like, what do we need to have happen, if anything?
I mean, if we are confident with the bot, I mean, we cannot foresee what other problems we will face in the future.
The bot could definitely have better local testing stories. Right now, the testing strategy for the previous iteration, at least, was make a clone of every repo that the bot publishes to privately, like on your personal GitHub, and then run the bot and change the direction. So it was basically like really tedious. We should be able to have, I don't know if we have the tests yet, but we should be able to have the tests for all these cases that break it, and be able to have regression tests where if something changes, we can test that and make sure we don't have to do manual fixes every time. So just general code hygiene to avoid it being a hacky one-off situation.
I would assume we might eventually want this not to be a part of Munch GitHub, or is this something that...
Oh, that was the other thing. This really has nothing to do with Munch GitHub at all. I actually prefer this not to be in the test infra repo, because this feels like this feels almost more like repo infra, but that's a different repo. That's something else. But no, it's definitely not a Munger.
I mean, if you're gonna own it, it doesn't matter a great deal to me where you put it. But I just want to emphasize that this is not really doing something that's related to API machinery.
Yeah, I absolutely understand that. For me, the blurry line would be between SIG testing or SIG release, since this seems mostly to be about pushing bits around, and there aren't necessarily tests that gate the bits being pushed around. But I haven't seen a significant amount of operational action from SIG release when it comes to these sorts of things.
There's no permanent owners of SIG release. So like consistency across release cycles has never been maintained. So the people who are experts on given areas leave SIG release, and then there's new people that come on board asking what happened. This SIG at least has consistency across release cycles.
Yeah, I don't get the sense that SIG release is ready to take on any ongoing service at this point, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. So, no, and I'm not talking about Jace. I mean, in my head, I'm thinking of folks like Jeff Grafton or David McMahon who've like hacked at shell scripts and ugly things that actually cut bits to get them out the door, right?
No one maintains Enigo. Everyone just kind of like comes in, does their work, leaves. Then they're like, what is this?
We do have someone that works on releases specifically.
But okay, I guess for me, it would be that SIG testing is trying really hard to get away from Munch GitHub as the source of all things. And if this doesn't specifically depend upon anything in Munch GitHub, we can make it a separate bot. And I think Cole just made like an issue creator bot that pulled out a bunch of things from Munch GitHub, so we could follow that pattern here. Beyond that, like, I don't know, operational experience with it, documents. common failures, the usual things you get from just seeing it run, like common failures you would expect, and how to work around that, and making sure that there's more than a single point of failure for domain knowledge.
I think it would be useful for, SIG testing, maybe like Ryan and/or I from SIG testing, and maybe Xiao and Stefan from SIG API machinery to sort of come up with a transition plan that, we both agree to about, like, here's what we're going to do. And then when we complete all that, test infra will own the progress forward from then on. Does that seem reasonable to, us and to you? To everybody? Does that sound unreasonable to anybody?
Yeah, that sounds fine to me.
That sounds to me, and that's sort of the V1.8, V1.9 boundary I was using in my head, just sort of the bandwidth of teams, not technically tied to the 1.8 release.
Ryan, your thoughts about that?
Yeah, we can have a plan with, I guess right now API machinery is taking the brunt of it, and you don't want to, which makes sense. So we can have a plan for that.
I mean, I do know that I'm pretty sure that, like, Phil and the rest of SIG CLI is probably interested in doing something similar and having their own repos and stuff. So I think it's just that my feeling is that API machinery is kind of the, root or the sort of initiator of all this, but that it's probably going to spin out into other repos and SIGs as time progresses.
Yeah, I mean, we did it not because this is what we want to spend our time doing, but because we were 100% blocked on not being able to give people clients that could work with Kubernetes.
Since I mentioned Helm as somebody who's experiencing pain as a result of this, I'll go see if I can dig up somebody there who might be willing to also contribute some expertise. Just in the interest of, like, people who are feeling the pain would probably want to make sure this works well.
Well, thanks, Daniel and Xiao, for stopping by.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a bunch. That was informative. That also takes us to time. So I'll just save all the links and stuff I posted in the agenda for next week. The big one, just for this group, while we're in high bandwidth, is I just pushed out a PR to put the COPS AWS pre-submit job back to blocking. It was taken out of blocking for a variety of reasons, and I believe we have fixed all of those reasons. Context is in the pull request that I've linked in the meeting notes. I'll take it up in the SIG testing channel, but I consulted with folks at SIG Release, and they're all pretty much ready to move it back to blocking. So unless there are any wild objections from this group, I think we can move forward on that. And unless there's anything else, we can call it a happy Tuesday. All right, cool. Thanks everybody for your time.